I'm Duncan Warnock from Warnock Accounting. Today in this video we're going to work through some spend money bank account transactions from a business bank account for a business that is GST registered. Let's begin. What we see on the left hand side of the actual bank transactions: date, transaction amount, transaction description. We've categorized them as spend money transactions, and then we're looking to add extra columns to identify whether the transaction is a business expense, the business category, the business use percentage, whether GST was charged, the total including GST, the GST amount, the total including GST, and then the green columns on the far right is the business use percentage applied against those different transaction amount portions. So this is an example of what it will look like in the end. If it does get a bit too much working through this sort of activity, one scenario is to just stick to completing the blue columns. Don't worry about applying the business use percentage to the total transaction amount, the GST amount, and the total excluding the GST, and perhaps then get the accountant to help out from there. What we do want to go through in this video is an example where GST was charged, an example where GST isn't charged, and also an example where GST is charged but the business use of the transaction is not 100%. So let's go back to a starting position where we've exported the bank account transactions. We've just got the raw bank data, and then we have identified the spend money transactions. They're the transactions on the left. We work through the blue columns. This first one, it's a website expense. We've marked it as yes. It's 100% business use. We've categorized it as website expenses. GST was charged. We've recorded the total transaction amount. In this example video, we're doing a negative amount to show spend money, but you may find that gets a bit tedious after a while, and instead really just record all the amounts as positive numbers. If you do this, just make sure you're being consistent and not switching between positive and negative. This particular transaction, we've looked at the tax invoice that we received from the supplier, recorded the GST, and also recorded the total amount less the GST charged. The last three columns on the right, which are in the green, the amounts are going to be the same because the business use percentage was 100. We're still going to do the formulas anyway because we will maybe have one or more transactions where the business use is not 100%. As you can see in this example, very easy to get the percentage format wrong. So we're just going to tidy that up. So just keep an eye out and just do a sanity check of the data that you're creating. So the way we did the formatting wasn't quite right because we just had a raw number of 100 rather than setting it to percentage first and then entering 100. So we're just tidying that up now. Again, when doing all this type of work, just sanity check your work just to look out for mistakes that can easily be made without realizing. So doing the formula now to basically multiply the transaction totals by the business use percentage. That's the green columns on the right, and we've done that transaction. We're going to look at another example of a business expense transaction. And it's going to be a transaction with Officeworks. It's stationery, but the stationery purchase, only half of it is used for the business and half is private. So we really need to record the business use percentage as 50%. It's all stationery. So yes, GST was charged. We're going to capture the total transaction amount, the total GST charged, and the total excluding GST. But we don't want to claim that entire amount. So this is where the 3 columns in green become relevant. It's identifying the actual business use portion of the transaction as opposed to the original transaction amount. So we'll just work through that. We're recording the GST charge. Again, reciting the supporting documentation from the supplier. We're going to use the same formulas as before. It's the business use column being populated by the business use percentage and then times by the relevant total. So we've got the business use percentage times the total including GST, the GST amount, and total excluding GST. Next example, we want to show an example where it is a business expense but GST has not been charged. Very common for ASIC fees because their expenses are not GST charged, but you also have scenarios where the supplier is not GST registered and won't charge GST, or maybe there's an exemption with that business in terms of charging GST on their service. So I just got a hiccup there with some of the formatting in terms of trying to just filter. Let's just try that again. I think I might have clicked on something wrong. Just filter. The reason I'm doing the filtering now, the advantage of the yes, no, question and answer columns is that we can do a filter on all the yeses where GST is being charged, and just sort of double check that we are recording GST amounts. And likewise, we'll also be able to review the no GST and just make sure no GST is charged. Just when you get a lot of transactions, easy to make a mistake in that situation, and it's a good sanity check. Alright, so we've gone through 3 key different examples. If you get stuck, just categorize it as accountant advice required. You can see here is an example of how it looks at the end. Again, when in doubt, just flag it as something you're not sure, accountant advice required. If you get 80% of the transactions done and you're not sure about the other 20, put accountant advice required, get some help as needed. The trick of this process is to let you do a lot of the heavy lifting and work through things yourself. And at the end, good idea to do a total of each column. Again, do a bit of a sanity check. Do those totals look right from what you were thinking? Alright, I hope you found this video helpful. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.